Hello and welcome to this week's First to the Field Agronomy Update. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about things happening with First to the Field in the coming week, as well as some issues we're seeing in the field around soybean emergence, and also talk about fence line applications. So yesterday, the First to the Field team had a chance with the rain that came to sit down and meet and kind of compare notes from where a lot of the projects were at. And so I wanted to kind of pass some of those things on that we discussed. We're about a third of the way getting the as-applied maps gathered that we talked about that we were wanting to get last week for the 3 trials that are in the ground. So if you haven't gotten that information this week with the wet spell here, we should be able to have an opportunity to get that information collected. So if you haven't talked to your First to the Field lead, feel free to do that, or they'll be in contact with you here shortly. Secondly, we also laid out the game plan for getting out in the field and taking a look and making early observations. So expect probably in the next week to 10 days. We kind of shoot for that second to third trifoliate stage in soybeans, or with a lot of these corn trials, V3 to V5 is kind of the optimal stage to come out and take pictures and dig roots and make comparisons. So those are some of the things from a First to the Field standpoint that you can expect us to be contacting you about in the next week. So in regards to comments around things happening in the field or agronomic notes that we think are worthy of talking about, this last week's been pretty interesting with the cold stress that occurred last Tuesday morning. We got down to temps at 35 to 36 degrees. And a lot of people didn't think that it froze very hard, but by Thursday or Friday morning, we could definitely see that the corn crop had been impacted one way or the other from the frost. And at that point also, we were starting to get some telephone calls on people concerned about soybeans and whether or not they were impacted by the frost, as there were some fields that were struggling from an emergence standpoint. So people were thinking, it could have been a frost issue, maybe a herbicide interaction issue, or maybe just planting conditions maybe weren't ideal. So we went out and we looked at some fields. And what we saw were, in some cases, we had some fields, I would say probably the minority as a whole when you go across fields in the countryside, but there were some fields that were planted within a certain window that maybe conditions were pushed a little bit, where compaction or downforce caused a lot of sidewall compaction or crusting of the soil, where the beans were trying to really fight through a stressed area. And then you couple that on top, potentially a residual herbicide, which in a cool, damp period like that can be an additional stress. And then the cool dampness itself lends itself really, really well to a disease like Pythium. And a lot of people have made the comment when we've talked about Pythium that, well, I used a seed treatment, I shouldn't have had a Pythium issue. And one thing I wanted to clarify on, and it's something that has been a concern the last couple of years, is the seed treatments we use currently for Pythium are the same seed treatments we used 25 years ago, and that's the mefenoxam or metalaxyl family of chemistry. So we've had a single mode of action that's been really the thing we've leaned on for the last 20 to 25 years when it comes to corn and soybean seed treatments. And so it is possible, and universities have confirmed race shifts in Pythium, so that we have some lines of Pythium now that are in fact resistant and been confirmed resistant to some of the fungicides that we use. So that's something to keep in mind if you are out evaluating soybean stands and you're seeing beans that have come up and the hypocotyl looks somewhat rotted, or the cotyledons look rotted coming out of the ground. There's a couple different things that can go into that, but from what we're seeing to this point, I would probably suspect Pythium probably being the leading causation agent at this point in time. Just given the conditions that we had, were really, really suitable for Pythium development, as it likes cool and wet soils. So with the wet week that we have ahead of us right now, one thing I'd tell people to potentially focus on, if the ground does firm up enough, is to get around and try to make fence line spray applications this week. I know that's a job that a lot of people like to push off until they get done with post-emerge spraying, but right now, the weeds in the fence lines are starting to come. I was out spraying my own this weekend, and we had giant ragweed that were already 6 inches tall, and some marijuana plants that were 6 to 8 inches tall already. So at least what I saw in my own stuff. So if you've got a chance, it'd be a great time to get out and make that a priority. We've had a lot of people complain over the last year or two that products that they've used in the past, like 2,4-D, maybe aren't cutting the mustard and taking down some of the issues that we're dealing with in our fence lines. So if that's been your case, there are some other products that people can switch into, including Pasture Guard or Grazon, or maybe tank mixing in some Banville with the 2,4-D to help juice that up. But in all honesty, the best thing that you can do to have better control is to spray more timely and spray weeds when they're in the 4 to 6 inch range, instead of waiting for things to get up and be a couple feet tall after we've finished post-emerge spraying. So that's your First to the Field agronomy update for the week of May 26, 2015. We appreciate you taking the time to watch and listen. And if you have any questions or comments about what we talked about today, please feel free to give your local Osmus Farm Supply representative a call.